Good evening. I'm Sean.
And I'm David.
And I'm Leah, not Tippi Hedren or Janet Leigh or any of these other blondes.
No, definitely not.
Well, if you hadn't figured it out already, we're here to talk about Alfred Hitchcock. And it's been quite a year for Alfred Hitchcock. Not only is there a new Blu-ray set with 15 of his best films, but also there's a movie coming out starring Anthony Hopkins called Hitchcock, another movie coming on HBO with Toby Jones, and this year, Sight and Sound released a new poll of the greatest movies ever made, and critics have chosen Vertigo as the #1 film of all time.
Didn't know that.
Eclipsing Citizen Kane.
That is just bananas.
And I think it's important to point out that this is not an easy job for any of us.
No.
To try to pick out our most noted or our most favorite Hitchcock film. But for me, I have to go with North by Northwest. Now, the premise of this movie is very much one that we've seen Hitchcock mine before. A case of mistaken identity. Cary Grant plays Roger Thornhill, a carefree ad executive in New York City, and he is mistaken for one George Kaplan, who is supposed to be this spy that these other group of spies are trying to track down and eventually kill. And Ernest Lehman wrote the screenplay, and Ernest Lehman is probably one of the greatest screenwriters of all time because he did West Side Story.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
And The Sweet Smell of Success.
And The King and I.
Ah.
I mean, it's really remarkable what he's done. So North by Northwest definitely captured the zeitgeist of the era. The Cold War, spies, intrigue, secrets being kept and stolen. I love the movie because Cary Grant is wonderful. He's very dashing, he's very debonair, and he's also got a lot of quips to him. Even in the most dire of circumstances, he seems to be completely at ease with himself.
You will wait here. Don't hurry, I'll catch up on my reading.
And Eva Marie Saint is beautiful as Eve, and she does a wonderful job of letting you know that she's hiding something. And you know that very early on in the movie. The only thing that really creeps me out is the fact that Eva Marie Saint is literally young enough to be Cary Grant's daughter. But I know that I'm viewing it through 21st century goggles, and versus when this movie was made in 1959, that was very much the case in movies. You had the dashing older man and the beautiful younger woman in danger. And they do make a wonderful couple. They have wonderful chemistry.
The moment I meet an attractive woman, I have to start pretending I've no desire to make love to her.
What makes you think you have to conceal it?
She might find the idea objectionable.
Then again, she might not.
By the time North by Northwest started production, Cary Grant was an Alfred Hitchcock veteran. So clearly he and Hitch had a great working relationship, and that comes to bear in this movie. And it's got a great supporting cast. A very young Martin Landau, who's very menacing as one of the bad guy spies. And then, of course, there's James Mason as the lead spy. The movie is a gorgeous movie. It has so many wonderful locations. There's the United Nations, there's Mount Rushmore, there's the Great Plains. It all makes for a really amazing, suspenseful, thrilling movie by Hitch.
So my notable Hitchcock film, because it's so impossible to pick just one Hitchcock. So I went a little off the beaten path. I went for the 1972 shocking murder, rape thriller, Frenzy. So now we're in 1972 and we're in London, specifically in the Covent Garden area. And there is a rapist murderer running around this part of town. And he has done this to several women in this town, and Richard Blaney, our hero, his ex-wife winds up raped and murdered.
Oh, wow.
So he, of course, becomes the leading suspect in her rape and murder, and he becomes the suspect in all of the serial rapes and murders. Frenzy is an adaptation of an Arthur La Bern novel. It was adapted by Anthony Shaffer, who also wrote the stage play Sleuth. But Mr. La Bern was not happy with the adaptation. He hated it. He publicly dissociated with himself from this film.
Wow.
He hated the dialogue. He also really disliked the treatment of the law enforcement of Scotland Yard.
I've never run into any of these jokers before, sir. What are they like? Well, they vary, but not a lot. The important thing to remember is that they hate women and are mostly impotent.
It started lesser-known British talent. John Finch plays Richard Blaney, who was a very well-respected British actor on stage and television. And it also starred Barry Foster, who again was also a well-known British actor. In casting Frenzy, Hitchcock originally went to Michael Caine to play the killer in this film, and Michael Caine saw the script and he said, "These characters are disgusting, I don't want anything to do with them." And she turned down the role also. These larger personas did not choose to do this film, and I think it's actually to Hitchcock's benefit that you did not have Michael Caine and Vanessa Redgrave, who were relatively popular and well-known and clearly on their way to stardom by 1972. And I think that their personas would have overshadowed the stories.
We haven't seen you in ages, Dick. How's Brenda? Do you still hear from her?
Well, she's dead, I'm afraid.
Yes. And you killed her.
Yes, steady on, Hattie. He didn't do it. He's just been telling me all about it.
Has he now?
So I have a difficult time choosing a favorite Hitchcock picture as well. But one I find myself watching the most often is from 1954. It's called Rear Window.
Oh, no, that's my favorite.
Is that your favorite?
That's my favorite Hitchcock movie.
So Hitchcock, of course, did 4 films with Cary Grant. He also did 4 films with the great Jimmy Stewart. One of my favorite lines ever echoed by Jimmy Stewart is, Raymond Burr's across the street killing his wife.
Wow, that was really good.
Well, maybe he didn't say that exactly that way.
That was the actor, not the character.
Yeah.
Citation for that?
Jimmy Stewart plays L.B. Jeffries, who is a photographer who's been injured. He's broken his leg, and he's confined to his Greenwich Village apartment, where he just decides, I got nothing better to do than just spy on my neighbors. And Raymond Burr plays Lars Thorwall, his neighbor across the street, who gets in an argument with his wife, and his wife suddenly disappears.
The lady vanishes?
Ah, yes, she does. And so Jeffries thinks, I'm onto something here. I think he killed his wife.
Right.
And along with his gorgeous girlfriend, played by Grace Kelly, they investigate what goes on and may solve the murder, or if there ever was a murder. I'm not going to let you know either way.
I've seen bickering and family quarrels and mysterious trips at night, and knives and saws and ropes, and now since last evening, not a sign of the wife. All right, now you tell me where she is.
I don't
What's she
know.
doing? Where is she?
It's got a tremendous amount of suspense. He's the master of suspense, after all. It's also one of the earliest examples of the claustrophobic thriller. I mean, we're right there in the apartment. It's a single location. We don't go anywhere else. Right. And it's sort of an analogy with the audience watching the picture.
I know I like to look.
There you go. The audience is watching the movie. Right. Jeffries is watching basically his own movie, and so you're right there with him along with the ride. And Jimmy Stewart plays an everyman about as good as anybody, of course. And Grace Kelly, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the most beautiful women who ever graced the screen. Also, you got Thelma Ritter playing the comic relief.
Love Thelma Ritter.
His nurse, L.B. Jeffries' nurse.
We become a race of peeping Toms. What people ought to do is get outside their own house and look in for a change.
Raymond Burr doesn't really have too many lines in the movies, but he's terribly memorable. I can see why.
He's very menacing and scary.
Yeah,
very menacing.
Very scary dude.
Turn out the light, he's seen him.
Rear Window was written by John Michael Hayes from a short story called It Had to Be Murder by Cornell Woolrich. And it's interesting that a lot of Hitchcock movies are actually adapted from sources, from novels, from short stories, if you have.
North by Northwest was an adaptation.
Psycho, and I don't think a lot of people know about, you know, the fact that these are adaptations.
North by Northwest is not only a classic that is suspenseful and thrilling, but it's a blueprint for all of the James Bond movies to come. See it.
Frenzy is not an easy film to watch, but as we get to the end of Hitchcock's career, it's definitely a very bold statement on that body of work. Neckties, tie pins, and potato sacks will never be viewed the same way again. See it.
Rear Window, if you're a voyeur, which of course the three of us are.
Clearly.
It's a classic picture. It's a masterpiece of suspense from the master of suspense. See it.
So cheers, here's to Hitch.
Hitch.
Dun, 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 dun. I don't know what zeitgeist means, but it makes me sound really important and like I've been to film school, right?
Okay.
What have you got in these bags?
Bowling balls, naturally.